歡迎大家收睇 HSBC Live Live Well Series。大家好，我係 Steph， 我好開心同 HSBC 一齊合作，一齊推廣全方位健康概念。我會分享下啲 tips 同埋 exercise，你度度都可以做嘅，可以喺屋企啊、喺公司啊，全部地方。如果你有個 mat 啊、有個牆都可以做嘅。同埋我會分享下自己點克服困難。Okay, so today we're going to work at the neck and the shoulders. So specifically what I want you to think of are two little muscles which maybe you've never heard of. You might have heard of the traps before, but the reason why I'm telling you about these two is because they're two muscles that overlap between the neck and the shoulders. So you have something called the levator scapulae and you've got your trapezius muscles. These two guys actually sit in between the two and they work to actually support your head and your neck as well as link into the shoulder blades. So when you can then think of this, you might better understand why you might have tightness in the shoulders which actually radiate into neck and maybe even headaches sometimes. Not saying that's the only reason why that might happen, but it is just giving you more pieces to the puzzle for you to start to understand your body a little bit better. So the first thing we're gonna go through is we're gonna go into a neck stretch. We're gonna really target in through here and isolate the rest of your body. I'm actually sitting in a kneeling position because I want to hug my hands underneath my shins and I'm pulling my shoulder blades away from my ears here. So instead of rounding down where you can see I slump, I'll show you two angles. The first one, I'm gonna stay upright. My first stretch is gonna come sideways. So I wanna draw my left ear towards my left shoulder and I want my chin to face forward. My nose is facing you directly in front of me. And in this position now, I'm gonna pull my right shoulder down. So I'm moving this arm down. And then I'll feel a big pull come through the outer right neck area at the base of my neck. From here, you just hold and you breathe. And here, when you start to feel these painful sensations, remember often they're just pulling sensations. So you don't actually want to feel sharp pains, and if you do, pull out of it a little bit. So the amount in which you go down to always depends on how tight your body is, not what I look like on the camera, okay? It's not about what the shape looks like, it's about how you feel it. Then from here, to change the slight variation, all we need to do now is we untuck the left hand because I'm stretching out towards my left hand side. And now I want to bring my chin towards my shoulder. And then I'm going to bring my left hand and gently tug down. So the stretch now changes from the outer right side to the right, a little bit more on the posterior side here. I use the weight of my hand to gently pull. And now my chin comes down towards my armpit and I hold. This one is a passive stretch in the sense that we are not going through any movement. However, that doesn't mean you're passive and relaxing through the rest of your body. You still have to stay active through the rest of your body here. Once you're done with that, take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, finishing off this stretch. You can hold this one as long as you like, but for today we're just gonna go through 30-second holds. Changing to the other side, so now I'm gonna keep both hands under first, pull my left shoulder down, right ear to right shoulder, and again, I feel it pull through here. If you start to feel one side is tighter than the other, pay attention to that. Or if you want more assistance, you can always keep that same angle here, but use the weight of your hand once again to help tug a little further if you wanna go deeper. But again, if just the weight of your head is enough, you stay there. Taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And from here, slowly changing the angle, all I'm gonna do is shift my chin towards my armpit. I look down towards the mat. I'm gonna pull onto the back of my head now as I pull down. I feel the change in the stretch as I'm in this position. And then I hold. Go for one more deep breath here. Continuing to pull that left shoulder away from your ear. And relax, coming back out, gently come back out of that stretch. So we're starting nice and easy through the neck stretches. Just by doing that, you'll start to feel a lot more length come through the sides of the neck, maybe even the back side of the neck. So the second exercise is actually going to target lower down now, so in towards the chest, not the shoulders yet, but you also have to remember that the chest and your pec muscles are all interlinked. We can't just look at the shoulder just as this. We need to see the front, the side, the back, and also the top part of it, which is why you can now see the shoulder is linked up to the neck. Okay, so for the next one, we're actually gonna lie down flat on your belly. As I lie down on my belly, I'm gonna bring my right arm out to the side. I'm gonna keep it in a 90-degree angle where my elbow is in line with my shoulder and my left arm is gonna be straight. From here, my right arm is my anchor. I'm gonna roll onto my right hip. I'm gonna try and bring my body over into this position. So I start to stretch out my right chest in this position. So in this position, you wanna try and bring your left knee up as high as it can go. You start to open up the lower spine, but more importantly, you start to feel the right shoulder, the front part of the shoulder and your pecs start to stretch. You hold for 3, 2, 1, come back out. Now in this position, you keep your head to the left, but this time you straighten out a little bit more with the right arm. So once again, roll back over. You hold here. You might find you have more space now. So you take note of the bent arm and the straight arm positions. And if you can, you bring your left hand close, or if you want to stay here. To go more advanced, you come into a bent arm position, you roll even further, and eventually at one point, maybe you'll bring your hips down closer towards the floor. You can keep your hand on the floor, or you can start to reach backwards, maybe finding the floor behind you. Take a deep breath in, and a deep breath out. We're gonna slowly roll onto the other side now. As you roll back over, take your time, and then bring yourself onto the left-hand side now. So I'm gonna keep my left arm bent, my right arm is straight, left ear to the mat. From here, I'm gonna roll over onto my left-hand side. So again, I take note of which side feels tighter. Maybe it's even through your hips that you start to notice the tightness. But again, this is just feedback for you. You take note and you try and find the sensation that you're actually looking for. So right now I know I'm trying to target my left chest, not my hips, not my lower back. If I don't feel it through there, change up the leg positioning. You don't have to be in the positioning that I'm showing you right here. This is because this is the best way that I can get into it. And generally, most people will get it in that same area. However, if you don't, remember you can always shimmy your rib cage across and move in so that you can start to feel that pulling through that left chest. One more deep breath here before we change the variation. Inhale. And exhale. Sink a little deeper through that shoulder. Then you come back out slowly. And again, now we're gonna straighten out that left arm straight. Keep the left ear on the mat, right hand to the floor. I bring that leg across once again, and now I'm gonna see, wow, suddenly my left shoulder can open up a lot further. Now for me, I've had a history of injury in my right shoulder, so I can tell the difference straight away. But you might be able to see I can actually roll even further and actually bring my hands back behind me. You can't see it, but I'm touching my fingers. So again, if you start to notice that maybe your left side is tighter, stay here. Don't push into somewhere that you're not capable of going to yet. You will be able to get there one day, but it has to be small, little, consistent steps of doing a little bit each day. One more breath in. One little thing I didn't mention just now, you might notice your head might come up off the ground. If it's really uncomfortable for you, you can always pop your head back down to the floor, or maybe even put a prop underneath it. Or if you find that you can actually stay up here, I always try and suggest to keep yourself upright because it trains up the neck muscles. And then as you come back out, take your time coming back out, coming out the exact same way you went in. And that is it for your chest stretches. So the next exercise that we're going to be doing is going to be focusing on your thoracic extension. So thoracic might sound like a dinosaur to you or a very unfamiliar word. Basically, it's your T-spine, okay? So we split up the spine into segments. You have your cervical spine, which is your C-spine, basically your neck and your head. Then you have your thoracic spine, which comes down, it's your rib cage area. And then you have your lumbar spine, which is attached to the tailbone. But for today, when we're looking at our T-spine, this is the most important part because it links directly into the shoulder girdle, and then your neck is attached into it, okay? So when we're looking at our T-spine right now, we're gonna try and remove the lower part of the spine out of this altogether. In this position, if you think of the downward facing dog that we did last week in the initial series, what we're looking to do is really get your spine to extend rather than flex. So when we're sitting at desks all the time, or anytime we're actually sitting down, most of the time we slunch down into a rounded position. Our head pokes forward because we get lazy. Our postural muscles just don't really fire as much as they probably should. So every time we come into flexion, you have to think there's always an opposing action, which is going to be that extension. So I'm going to use a chair right now to help me with this, and I find that I do this quite a bit, especially when I'm doing my admin, and I feel aches and pains, and the more that I've learned over time, the more you move, the better you feel. So for me, that's why I do it, but I invite you to come join me along the way because, again, sometimes you don't realize where your norm is, and maybe pain is your norm right now, but it shouldn't be. And as I mentioned earlier, pain is a signal that it's a warning sign. So we really do need to pay attention to this. So with this right now, I'm gonna gauge my distance by moving my hips back a little bit so my knees stay underneath my hips. And then all I'm gonna do is place my hands onto the seat or the couch, whatever you have at home. It can be a table, whatever it is. I just have a lower seat right now, which means I have to pull my knees back a little bit further. If you have a higher one, say I'm using this one, I'd actually pull myself closer. It all depends on how high you're actually using or how high the platform is that you're using. So in this position, I'm gonna keep my arms straight. I'm gonna keep them shoulder width apart. I'm gonna keep moving my hips back until I can press my chest through. So now you can see my biceps or my upper arms are on the bench here, and I'm trying to let my head drop down without looking down. So this position here is more about trying to get this part of my spine, my T-spine, to extend rather than my lower belly. So this is actually lazy, but what I want to try and do is this. I want to suck my belly back up and then press my chest through. And you can see how active my arms are here rather than just relaxing them. I'm keeping my whole arm straight to think of squeezing my shoulder blades as I'm here. I hold for 3, 2, 1. I come back out, reset, and then again, I come back in. I'm gonna go for 5 reps like this. I engage my stomach, and if you wanna include your lumbar spine now to get more extension through the entire spine, you can pull your tailbone up as you drop down for 3, 2, 1. Come back in 3 more times and in. Breathing in, 2, 3. Come back in. On the 5th one, we're actually gonna hold. So last 2, 2, 1. And in, and again, you always pair it with your breathing. Every single exhale should bring you into that deeper part of the stretch, maybe into the most uncomfortable zone here. But now we hold. Now again, as I mentioned just now, for me, I have a right shoulder injury that's been niggling for years now. I've been working on it, but I do notice the differences. That doesn't mean that I don't push into that uncomfortable zone. And like when I had to do my rehab post-surgery, I actually had to do a lot that felt super uncomfortable and thought that my arm might fall off or that I would never be able to lift it up again. But the resilience that was developed through hardship and through the physical activity and just through mindset, really, I think I pushed myself through into different areas where I knew that it's okay. The pain is only temporary. Whatever I'm doing now, I'm going to grow from, I'm going to get better from. And physically, it's more tangible. But mentally, that growth is actually sometimes quite intangible and you don't really know where you're going with it. So when you tag it onto something that's physical, little do you know how much you're growing outside of that. So the physical side of things is only just a tool that we use to pair it with our mental skills, to pair it with the mental learnings, which you can hopefully then transfer into other aspects of your life, which ultimately, when you think about holistic well-being, it's all aspects, it's multifaceted. So just keeping that in mind, we're gonna try and start to sink a little deeper into a range that maybe you think you couldn't get to before. We're gonna take a deep breath in. And as you take a deep breath out, sink even further. Squeeze your shoulder blades, go deeper, bring your chest down towards the ground. One more time in. And out, go even further. Even when you think your body can't get there, you squeeze a little more and you breathe out to get you there. One last time in. And out. And then from there, slowly take yourself out of that. Bring yourself back up. And just counter it by coming back into spinal flexion. And come back up. So that right there is your second exercise. Well, I'd say the second portion of exercises along with the bench. And the next part, we're actually gonna use a wall. So all you need is a floor, a chair, and a wall. And the final exercise is actually gonna be using the wall once again, but this time your bum is gonna go back against the wall and we're just gonna bring our arms into bent arm positions here. I'm gonna tuck my chin in. I will continue to speak to you more about how I deal with struggle, but for this one, I wanna make sure I keep this tucked in. I'm gonna tuck my rib cage in here. I'm just gonna slide my arms up. So this is gonna probably be the hardest one and we're gonna close with this one. As I slide up, I wanna try and keep my shoulders and my wrists on the wall as I keep my back on the wall. Then from here, I slide back down. I fire up everything through my backside. As I come up, again, you might notice that my right side is coming a little bit off the wall. I feel a slight pain sensation there, so I'm not gonna push it too much, but if you can go further, feel free to go further. We've got 5 reps on this one. Now, what I was talking about earlier in terms of struggle, physically, you can tell me what to do and I'll just tell my body to do it. I don't have to process the information quite so much. Whereas emotionally, I know one of the struggles that I face is the pressures of relationships and trying to keep up relationships. And all of that is hard work. So my partner at home, my family, my friends, I don't want to have to give up my social life in terms of doing well with my career. But at the same time, I put so many hours into my career, it's hard to balance that out without actually giving back to myself. So I struggle to actually take care of myself too much, or at least sometimes I don't give myself enough of that one-on-one time. And I try and actually spend time with other people, but I think when we think of balance altogether, this is our last one. Coming all the way back in. And come back out. So I think when you actually think about balance altogether, we have to remember that we're constantly toying, right? So one time you might be doing well with your career, then maybe your physical side starts to drop off. Or maybe another time you start to do well physically, but then your social side drops off. And then maybe another time you're starting to do the social side well, but then other things fall off. So when we think about how to actually approach all of this, no one person has ever got it nailed. And I promise you, if there is anyone who said they've nailed it to you, that's not true, because it's impossible to have everything in that balanced realm. So when we start to learn how to actually do these hard things well, try to balance things out, but that means sacrificing something else. Maybe then we start to realize that holistic is a word that we like to use because it is probably the best word that encapsulates everything we're trying to get at. But what does that mean to you? And I'm gonna leave it with a question right now, because I think it's important for you to question what is important for you. How do you think you can take care of yourself better? And are you addressing the multiple variables in your life, rather than just thinking of one goal-driven thing that maybe you've been told growing up the career is what you should be focusing on? What about what you want to do? And maybe your career is, where you are, where you want to be, but ultimately your happiness and your health and everything else in that realm needs to come together to try and find some kind of happy medium there.
咁多謝大家收睇今日嘅 HSBC Live Live Well Series。下一集我哋會講返脊骨健康，下次見啦！